Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something really unique. It's this untitled document. It feels like just a raw stream of consciousness, like someone's inner monologue just captured.
Yeah, it really reads that way, unfiltered.
And it goes everywhere, right? From like live streaming while driving the practicalities, potential legal stuff.
Or maybe the lack thereof
There's-
as they see it.
Right, all the way to these, deep philosophical questions, language, identity, tech, what meaning even is.
It's a lot packed in there.
Definitely. So our mission today is basically to unpack this whole stream of thought, pull out the main thread, see how these kind of disparate ideas connect.
Which is the fascinating part, the connection.
Exactly. It's like a journey into one person's mind, trying to figure out the modern world, their place in it. I think there are some really interesting insights here for all of us.
Agreed. Where should we start?
Let's start with how this whole thing is even presented. This idea of exposed expression.
Right, that's core. It's not a polished piece. It's presented as just capturing a piece of this inner monologue that they say is running, like 247.
Wow. 204.7.
Yeah, it's not crafted for an audience initially. It's just the raw feed.
And they connect doing this exposed expression to being able to step back and also to meditating at any point in life.
Mm-hmm. It seems like the capture itself is almost part of that stepping back, or maybe a result of a certain kind of meditative state.
That meditation lake is interesting. They kind of redefine it, don't they?
They really do. They set up this contrast. Like the traditional view, you need a special spot, sit a certain way, clear your mind, aim for blankness.
Yeah, the image everyone has.
Right. And they contrast that with their own take, which is just about existing for existing's sake. Anywhere, anytime.
So not necessarily stillness or emptying the mind.
Seems not. More like being present within the moment. Whatever's happening, even the thoughts themselves.
That makes it way more accessible, I think. Takes it out of the formal practice docs.
Definitely. And they do acknowledge, which is important, that meditation means different things to different people, different cultures.
True. No single definition. Theirs is just another layer on that spectrum.
A pretty interesting one.
Yeah.
But trying to capture this spontaneous state with tech, that brings its own problems.
Oh, yeah. The practical side. They get right into that. Using smart glasses, a phone.
And it wasn't smooth sailing.
Not at all. Glasses overheating, beeping.
Turn them off, right.
Yeah. Which meant switching devices, maybe midstream. Glasses to phone, maybe an external mic.
And that messed with the audio quality, particularly for something like Instagram Live. They were worried about that.
Yeah, they mentioned the audio archive quality, conscious that the tech issues impact anyone listening later.
And they're pretty open about it being early days for this specific setup, like only episode 2.
Right. It's framed as very much a learning process.
Yeah.
An experiment. Technical glitches are just part of figuring it out.
The goal isn't polished production right then and there.
Which gets us to the why. Why do this at all? They connect it back later.
Mm-hmm. The main driver isn't really broadcasting, it seems. It's about getting thoughts onto paper.
Into a format they can review, process.
Exactly. And doing it in the most efficient way possible.
So efficiency over polish.
Totally. They explicitly say, not aiming for a cinematic masterpiece.
Just capture the thought.
Capture the thought. They even talk about testing it out while doing manual labor.
On the property, yeah.
Using that physical work as a kind of backdrop for the inner monologue to flow out.
That makes sense.
They call it an opportunity to express the ideas outside of my own life that I'm trying to incorporate within this other aspect of myself that is just me. It's integrated. Physical work, mental expression.
Okay, so that's the first big piece. This practice of intentionally capturing the unfiltered inner chatter using tech, focusing on efficiency, seeing it as a kind of meditation or expression.
And as soon as they start capturing this inner stream, what's the first thing they grapple with? Language itself, yeah. They spend a lot of time on the frustration, the instability of words and meaning.
This idea that meanings aren't fixed, they're dictated by the people that use those words.
Which makes meaning incredibly fluid. Context is everything.
And they feel like if you look too closely at definitions, they just fall apart.
Break down and lose all meaning is how they put it.
Like conversations getting stuck in that he said, she said loop.
Exactly. Arguing about what words mean instead of the actual substance. The words become obstacles.
So how do they propose getting past that?
They make this distinction between the literal word and the intent and the direction of the use of that language.
The intent, okay.
They argue you could have two people saying the exact same thing, meaning the same thing, but it fails because they're not looking at the trajectory.
Where the word is trying to get you to in your mind.
That's the phrase. It's like, what's the underlying purpose? What's the speaker trying to achieve with that word?
Like looking past the vehicle to see where the driver's headed.
Nice analogy. Yeah. They suggest if you understand the implications, how words land in different contexts, you can sort of instinctually know the intended direction.
Even if you don't love the words they chose.
Right. Grasping the message despite maybe imperfect packaging.
And do they think most language has a positive intent behind it?
Generally, yes. They believe language is typically used in a way that's conducive for conveying information to our collective population.
So aiming for connection, sharing knowledge.
The core intent, they argue, is usually to get them to why situation, aiming to breathe positivity and knowledge.
But then they contrast that.
With people who deliberately try to manipulate the words of people, twisting meanings, connecting language to falsities.
And they see that as part of a bigger issue.
Yeah, a societal critique.
Yeah.
That we've lost a base level of trust.
An assumption of negative intent, like someone is out to get us.
Or that the goal of language is just to breed falsity and insecurity and fear. This lack of trust just shuts down looking for the real intent.
When, in their view, most people are actually trying to share something good.
Most of the time, whenever we say things, it's to propagate good. That's their belief.
Yeah.
Now, good is subjective. They admit that.
Everyone's definition is different.
Exactly. But the motivation is usually to share your version of good, to move things toward a state you see as positive.
This whole exploration leads them to that really provocative statement.
All of it is just words and meaning.
Yeah, that this is all anything really is. In terms of how we perceive and interact with reality, it makes you stop and think.
It really does. If everything boils down to words and subjective meanings, what about objective truth? Shared reality.
They mention exploring this in their writing,
Hmm.
posing it as a fun thought experiment.
What would society look like if everyone truly believed that? How would that change everything? Conflict, cooperation.
And they connect this right back to their own inner monologue. That constant chatter is seen as a process of defining times of things that are within our reality.
Happening 24/7. Words, meanings assigned, shifting, becoming memory, understanding.
And even though words are slippery externally, they seem to trust that their own words, even the raw ones,
Will find the meaning that they are meant to have at some point.
even if they don't fully get it when they first say it.
Yeah, implies meaning evolves, reveals itself over time. Personally, maybe collectively.
Okay, so this first big theme is really digging into thought capture, language, meaning. From the raw inner stream to the breakdown of words, the search for intent, and this kind of radical idea that reality is built from words and meaning.
It shows just how complex thinking and speaking really are, even the simplest versions.
And from that inner world, the source naturally moves to the physical. How we interact with the world, not just through words, but through augmentation.
And their definition of augmentation is really broad, much broader than just, tech implants.
Right. Applications of augmentations within your body, like whether internal or external.
It covers things we might not normally call augmentation, like natural or synthetic, pharmaceutical or plant medicine.
But then they push it even further, just having the phone on you all the time.
That counts. An augmentation of both your mind and your body.
How so? Mind, I get, but body.
They argue it has a physical effect. It takes a toll out of you, or it brings energy, depending on how you use it. It actually changes your physical state.
Huh. That's an interesting way to think about it. Makes the phone feel less like a tool and more like part of you, almost.
And this wide view of augmentation really highlights a personal struggle they talk about.
Finding the balance.
Yeah, the balance of augmentation within your personal life. They feel pretty strongly that most people are very out of balance or just completely out of touch with what they're doing to their bodies and minds.
Through all these constant inputs.
And this isn't a new struggle for them. They say it's been personal for a very long time.
They share that story about their upbringing, right? Which sounds quite different from today.
Very different. Parents who were very conscious about what they allowed me and my siblings to experience.
Mom was protective, but they said not overbearing.
More like instilling conscious choice about influences. Limited screen time, internet.
And food was a big part of it, too.
Huge. Healthy food, balancing treats with a hearty dinner that was nourishing, provided sustenance.
And they contrast that directly with what they see now.
Yeah, so much of the crap that we put in ourselves nowadays that they think can actively decay our bodies. It's a really physical perspective on consequences.
They do distinguish between types of augmentation, though. Physical versus mental.
They do Physical, like food, substances, tech affecting the body, mental, like tech or substances affecting the mind. But they immediately say the lines are very much been blurred within our society nowadays.
Like the phone examples, both.
Exactly. And they give more examples. Various drugs,
Pharmaceuticals? Yeah.
mind-altering ones like marijuana, psychedelics, narcotics, opioids. Things designed to target and augment specific areas with significant and lasting effects on the physiological aspect.
And they contrast those with, like, Tylenol.
Right. Non-mind-altering pain relievers like ibuprofen, Tylenol, seen as strictly meant to relieve pain, altering the physical sensation, what we say in society today, the body. More localized effect, maybe?
This whole detailed look at substances and tech leads them to a pretty critical view of modern life, doesn't it?
Yeah, this idea that we've disconnect ourselves from our bodies,
Become detached from physical sensations, how things affect us physiologically.
separated our conscious mind and thinking from the physical reality, and they think this hurts society a lot. They kind of flag it as an area for others to explore more deeply, but it's clearly a big concern for them.
And this ties into the regulatory side, too. The subjectivity of it all.
Totally. Defining what's negatively and positively impacting our lives or our bodies is highly, highly subjective.
The subjectivity is unbelievably vast, they say. Huge polarization.
And this observation fuels that strong statement they make that it's insane that the government is still trying to regulate what we do to our bodies.
That's definitely a perspective reflecting ideas about bodily autonomy versus state control.
It is, and it's presented as their thought within this stream, part of that huge ongoing debate about regulation, choice, health.
For sure. But they bring augmentation back to something really basic, too. Something we can't avoid.
Right, we're doing it constantly. Every single day we do that. Augment body and mind, consciously or not.
Even just eating and drinking.
Yeah, eating food and drinking water and breathing water framed as augmentation. It reframes just existing as this continuous process of modifying our internal state by interacting with the world.
Makes finding balance seem less about avoiding things and more about consciously navigating this constant stream of inputs.
Exactly.
So we've got the inner stream, language, and then augmenting the inner self, mind, and body. What's the flip side?
Outward projection. That's the other half of the coin.
How do they define that?
As your projection of what those augmentations are within yourself. It's how that internal state manifests externally.
How people present themselves, dress, act, words, actions, lifestyle.
All seen as a direct reflection of their inner self.
And that inner self is the combination of mind and body.
Yep. Mind and body combined, with the body as the tool the mind uses to fulfill action within this world. So projection isn't just putting on a show.
It's the augmented inner state actually doing things in the world.
Right. And we use this mind-body combination to project knowingly or unknowingly every day. They link this to the trend of being a creative, just being your person.
Figuring out who it actually is you want to be.
And that often starts externally, they suggest, with outward projection.
Like dressing, styling your hair, wearing makeup.
Tattoos, piercings, all framed as augmentation of your outward projection of self.
Some conscious, some unconscious.
A continuous process of presenting yourself, basically. And it's social, too.
How so? Connecting with others.
Yeah, people are trying to associate with certain aspects of themselves, which often align with people groups that they identify with, like their people, their community.
Yeah.
Projection signals belonging.
You use brands as an example,
Yeah.
right? Nike, Under Armour.
Exactly. Brands design things to connect with this specific group of people. Wearing it lets you project association with that group or its values.
And they mention consciously not wearing Nike.
Yeah, a personal anecdote. Disagreeing with messaging, so choosing not to wear it. Seeing that choice as a deliberate blip of thought affecting their outward projection.
So it can be very intentional.
Definitely. They talk about putting more intention and thought into what's projected out, not just appearance, but what you say and also how you say it.
Which brings us right back around.
To the inner monologue. Because the hardest part for them, they say, is figuring out how to say the things that I want to say.
That difficulty is the antithesis of my outward projection.
Yeah. Because while they're trying to project a certain self, the raw inner stuff is still that constant chatter of nonsense unceasing.
The big challenge is translating that messy internal stream into something clear for others.
Bridging that gap between raw thought and refined expression.
Which leads them to the next part of their process, actually refining it.
Right. They need a way of dealing with that chatter, manipulating it so it strings together and has meaning.
But initially, that meaning is just for them.
Kind of just only to myself, they admit. Makes sense in their head, maybe not outside.
So going back over the recordings, the captured thoughts is key.
Absolutely crucial. The more I go back and read and listen, the more I can formulate it in better ways to more accurately convey that meaning.
It's that review process that turns the raw stuff into something communicable.
Exactly. And that refinement is kind of the necessary follow-up to the raw capture. They call it the antithesis of my active pursuit of communication right now. Capture is phase 1, refinement phase 2.
So the current format, hitting live and recording it, that's purely about efficiency, getting it down.
That's how they frame it. Most efficient way for them to get thoughts onto paper. They literally see talking it out as
Writing down the words that I would write down for the transcripts and manuscripts.
that I am going to use for my more edited and thought out expressions of thought. The raw capture is the first draft material.
And this whole unfiltered capture approach is most efficient when combined with something else,
Right. The other tool they rely on heavily,
which is AI.
artificial intelligence. Yeah, this is where it gets very
They
contemporary.
use it as a processing tool for the captured thoughts.
Exactly. They chunk everything I say into an AI, basically. And it's not occasional.
Literally every single day for 6 months now.
Feeding daily journal entries, sometimes 6 pages, into an LLM. They even mention Notebook LM specifically.
So AI isn't generating the thoughts, it's working on the raw output.
Correct. And the big benefit, it gives a neutral, unbiased sense of what the words that I'm trying to say actually mean.
Strips away the immediate emotion or context.
Presents the semantic content. It gives a summary overview they can read or listen to, and this external view helps them understand their own thoughts better.
Significantly increases my efficiency to understanding them myself. The AI clarifies the core ideas buried in the noise.
And it's not just for self-understanding. Seeing how the AI interprets it helps them see,
How other people might interpret it.
which is huge given the subjectivity of language we talked about. Words don't always land as intended.
So the AI acts like a proxy for an external audience.
Showing potential misunderstandings, unclear bits, they find that very beneficial. Makes the raw stuff more digestible for others too, potentially.
Does it also make them more aware of how messy the raw thoughts are?
Definitely. They realize their unfiltered monologue is mostly nonsense to anybody but themselves. Seeing it reflected back by AI makes that clear.
Like, yeah, I see what you're trying to say, dude, but you're saying it in such a terrible way.
Exactly. Use different language, use different sentence structures. But the beauty of the AI for them is it lets them capture first without worrying about perfect structure then.
Which maintains that efficiency. Raw capture plus AI processing equals most efficient format for achievement.
That's their formula, and they're totally open about it. Plan to release the AI over script?
Yeah, share the processed versions. They have no care about that at all. Encourage others to take the raw scripts, use AI themselves.
A real reuse, recycle, decompose attitude towards their own thoughts and language.
It's a really modern workflow, isn't it? For
Yeah.
thinking, reflecting, creating. AI is a processor, not a creator.
Bridging that gap between internal chaos and external clarity.
Okay, so beyond this core practice, the source also touches on bigger projects, future stuff,
Right, brings in sustainability, tech, collective future ideas.
like the permaculture project. That sounds ambitious.
Very, turning their property into a permaculture establishment, aiming for a sustainable source of both energy and food and resources.
A self-sustaining ecosystem.
But not about controlling nature. More, dictating the movement of energy within to facilitate efficient flow. Working with it.
And the starting point sounds tough. Overrun forest, neglected for years.
Completely overrun by nature. So the goal is take what's there, maximize the efficiency, water collection, energy, composting, food, resources.
It's everything.
And the first step is hard physical work. Manual labor. Digging, clearing, making pathways.
Which is where the live streaming fits in again.
Yeah.
Testing the exposed expression while doing this work.
Yeah. And the motivation is deep, brings meaning to my life. Actively inputting energy and creating efficiency, physically, mirroring the mental work.
Doesn't matter if people watch the stream.
Not the point. Hope is someone will find meaning in it in the future. The process, maybe, or the result.
Then switching gears to future tech. The smart glasses again.
Yeah, looking ahead, as a tech enthusiast, they're excited for the next generation of smart glasses.
Mentions Google, Apple, Meta around 2026.
Believes the next wave is going to be all in our glasses.
Which would make that exposed expression even more seamless, right? Always on augmentation.
Potentially, yeah. But alongside that excitement, there's also reflection.
On the balance. Being online versus privacy.
Exactly. Figuring out the balance I want between exposing my every thought and being online to the world. That tension between transparency and personal space.
And then there's that really out there future vision.
The one they call woo-woo nonsense.
Yeah, that one.
The speculative end goal. Create some sort of collective consciousness that an AI can use and evaluate for higher forms of living.
Whoa. Collective consciousness analyzed by AI.
Could benefit AI or a human, but they think superintelligence is going to be able to use it more effectively than most humans.
It connects their personal capturing processing project to this massive, maybe post-human future.
Ties all the themes together, raw thought, AI, meaning into this potential outcome beyond the individual.
Okay, so all these different threads, inner monologue, language, augmentation, projection, AI, permaculture, future tech, collective consciousness, they all seem to feed into one big theme running through the whole thing.
The search for meaning.
Yeah, finding meaning in this chaotic, fast-moving life.
They use that Star Wars analogy, right? Hitting light speed in the Millennium Falcon.
Life as ever-changing, ever-evolving, a constant flow. A string of colors and lights just pelt you in the face.
You've set a direction, but you can't control what flies by.
And when you come out of hyperspeed, your brain processes some, but so much is just noise.
Nonsense that you don't need within your life at that specific moment.
Not unimportant forever, just.
It's not a part of where your self is aligned at that given moment. Maybe meaningful later on reflection, but extraneous in the flow.
But even with that feeling of being swept along, they stress not being bound to the present moment.
Yeah, not like binding myself to where my life is at any given moment. It's being with the flow, not stuck in one spot, acknowledging, appreciating the now with every fiber of my being.
Finding meaning in where I'm at every single day.
And that meaning found now is the fuel. It fuels the looking into where I want to be, looking into where I have been in the past.
You integrating past, present, future, anchored in today's meaning. That's how they bring meaning to myself.
Which brings them to that huge fundamental question.
What is meaning, and is it important? Do we actually have meaning as humans?
The big one. They admit no one has found a definitive answer, but they think about it a lot just for myself.
And their thinking circles back to subjective meaning.
Pretty much. If something's meaningful to you, then why else does it matter? Why should you care if someone else finds meaning in it? Defending that personal experience.
But maybe it's not totally isolated.
There's that possibility.
Like
if
what?
one person finds meaning, maybe someone else finds meaning in their meaning. At least one other person somewhere out there.
Which suggests some sort of purpose to this idea of meaning, even if it starts subjective.
Yeah. The more meaning something has, the more potential it has to grow and fester within the minds of anyone that also finds meaning in it. It can spread, resonate.
Some people share it, others just live in it.
And they see beauty and meaning being baked into life itself, an intrinsic potential.
And this whole process, capturing thoughts, reflecting, it's all part of creating chapters of thought.
An ongoing record of their subjective journey, the meaning found along the way.
Which leads to that final personal philosophy, the fool's mantra.
I am but a fool living this life, finding meaning.
It's simple, humble, seems to capture the whole thing.
Takes the pressure off, maybe? No need for objective answers or everyone agreeing. What matters is
There's a fool out there having fun, spreading love, and experiencing life for all that it is.
exactly. Reframes the whole intense process, the capturing, the wrestling with words, the augmentation, the search, not as some grand quest for truth, but as this very personal, maybe sometimes messy adventure of just being alive and finding your own value in it.
Okay, so quite a journey through the source. From capturing the inner monologue and redefining meditation,
Through the knots of language, subjectivity, intent,
to that broad view of augmentation, internal and external, and how it projects outwards.
the role of AI in processing it all, the permaculture dreams, the future tech hopes.
All wrapped up in this constant search for meaning in the flow.
It's incredibly personal, but touches on things we all experience, right? The inner chatter, communication struggles, how tech changes us, finding purpose.
Definitely. So thinking about all this, what parts really stood out to you listening? What resonated?
Then maybe a final thought to chew on. If our inner monologue is often nonsense to others and language is so slippery, what's the real point of communication?
Is perfect understanding even possible? Or is the value more in the attempt, the intent to share something, an idea, positivity, you're good or just?
The honest, unfiltered experience of being that fool living this life, finding meaning.
Something to consider as you navigate your own inner and outer worlds. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.